regular viewer of this channel, you might have noticed that I'm quite interested in rail transport. But something you might not know is that my other big passion is nature, and I've spent a lot of time camping and bushwalking in Australia's magnificent system of national parks. So it goes without saying that I get very excited when the opportunity comes along to combine these two interests. There are very few places in my home state of Victoria where you can really get deep into nature by public transport, although I may do a video about that in the future. However, our big neighbour to the north, New South Wales, has countless places where you can easily get out into the wilderness by train, including many places that are easy day trips from Sydney. In this video, we're going to take a look at probably the best example of this, a unique railway station deep in a national park with no road access. This is Wondabyne, a station that no transport YouTuber has ever visited before. 65 kilometres by rail from Sydney, about 70 minutes from Central Station, Wondabyne is on the Newcastle and Central Coast Line, which is an intercity route operated by New South Wales Trainlink. It's also the main line heading out of the Sydney Basin to the north, carrying long-distance passenger and freight trains, including interstate trains running to and from Queensland. Between the town of Brooklyn, located on the banks of the Hawkesbury River, and the much larger town of Woy Woy, the line runs through a very remote area of the Brisbane Water National Park, skirting along the edge of Mullet Creek, which isn't really a creek, being tidal and up to 500 metres across at several points. I don't know enough about fish to say whether there are mullet living in Mullet Creek, but there are definitely plenty of mullets on board the trains. There aren't any roads in this area, and if you want to drive between Brooklyn and Woy Woy, you'll need to take a long loop around to the west via the Pacific Highway, taking about twice as long as the railway running time. Wondabyne Station is located near the top end of Mullet Creek, not far from the entrance to the 1.7 kilometre long Woy Woy Tunnel. The platforms are a little over 10 metres long, less than one carriage length. Not the shortest platforms in New South Wales, but getting pretty close. This is a request stop, and as trains in New South Wales don't have a stop request button, as found on many systems overseas, passengers wanting to leave the train at Wondabyne need to request the stop in person by speaking to the guard, who will then relay that message to the driver. Stop at Wondabyne, please. Thank you. Because of the very short platforms, passengers then need to travel in the rear car, as only the very last door of the train will be on the platform. Approaching from the south, the line crosses the Hawkesbury River, then gracefully winds up the western side of Mullet Creek, where passengers are treated to spectacular scenery with some of the best views you can get from an electric train anywhere in Australia. The railway hugs the edge of the hillside, in many places cutting across small tidal inlets on curved causeways. You can't request just any train to stop at Wondabyne, you have to board one of the local trains listed as available to stop on the timetable.
This train will stop at Wondabyne. This station, Wondabyne.
After stepping off the train, something you'll quickly notice is that for such a tiny station, it's surprisingly well equipped. It has a PA system, security cameras, benches, shelters, informative signage showing the surrounding facilities, and even Wi-Fi. Basically, most of the things you'd expect to find at a large station, just not very many of them. So what's actually at Wondabyne that makes it worth having a station here? Well, the answer is today, almost nothing. A short distance from the platforms is an old sandstone quarry with a caretaker's house which is still occupied. It's easy to assume the quarry is abandoned, but that isn't the case. It's one of the oldest operating quarries in the country and still produces relatively small quantities of sandstone blocks. The station opened primarily for the use of quarry workers when the railway through here was completed in 1889. However, an earlier station called Mullet Creek had existed a short distance to the north, about here somewhere, for a very different purpose. The bridge over the Hawkesbury River was the final part of this line to be completed, and while it was under construction, trains were already operating between Sydney and Hawkesbury River, and from the north through the Woy Woy Tunnel and down to the Mullet Creek platform, with goods and passengers making the connection via paddle steamer. This was actually the final missing link connecting the railways of South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland, so its completion was very significant, finally allowing goods and passengers to travel between all the East Coast cities by rail, although there were of course several breaks of gauge. The Wondabyne quarry played an important role in this connection, providing the stone for the Hawkesbury River Bridge pillars. The original bridge was replaced by a new one on a different alignment in the 1940s, but the pillars from the 1889 bridge are still in place, so you can admire that Wondabyne sandstone to this day. The quarry also provided stone for many well-known historic buildings, including Sydney's St Mary's Cathedral and the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. The stone was, of course, originally shipped out by rail, However, the siding was removed about 25 years ago and the quarry's produce now has to be shipped out by barge. This is a pretty awkward arrangement. There's no formal crossing over the railway and the quarry operations aren't allowed to disrupt rail traffic, so stone can only leave the quarry during rare periods where the line is completely closed for track work, generally just 3 or 4 times a year. The stone is then stockpiled in this flat area on the eastern side of the line where it awaits shipping. When the station by the quarry opened, it was initially known as Hawkesbury Cabin, but was renamed Wondabyne in 1891 after Mount Wondabyne, which is over on the other side of the valley. In addition to the house by the quarry, there are also a small number of houses scattered along the opposite bank, predating the national park. Despite their extreme isolation, the residents of these houses can easily paddle or motor across the creek, leaving their vessels in the Wondabyne commuter car park, and catch a train to a nearby town or right into Sydney. Wondabyne gets an hourly off-peak frequency, and the Australian Bureau of Statistics lists the population of Wondabyne as 3. So this has got to be the best transport service per capita anywhere in Australia. However, the tiny number of residents aren't what generate most of the traffic that keeps the station open. From Wondabyne, you can access an extensive network of hiking tracks, reaching all through the national park, including the Great North Walk, a leisurely 260-kilometre stroll reaching all the way from Sydney to Newcastle. The station served roughly 8,500 passengers in 2023, an average of about 23 per day, so it's not at all uncommon for trains to be requested to stop here. Leaving the station area on foot, the track climbs steeply uphill through dry forest, interspersed with outcrops of sandstone. Even if long hikes aren't your thing, you can get a good feel for the bush here without wandering far from the station. Up on top of the outcrops, there are some fantastic views back down to the water, and in some places the railway, though I really don't recommend going off track here unless you're experienced with bush navigation. Along the way, there's a good chance you'll encounter some wildlife, including long bitey boys, and these rather large golden orb weaving spiders. Golden orbs have an unfortunate habit of building their huge webs spanning open areas and pathways, then sitting right in the middle at approximately human face height. Holy moly. While copping one of these on your nose is certainly traumatic, they're fortunately not very interested in biting humans, and apparently the bite isn't particularly bad. You also might pick up some travelling companions along the way in the form of these stripy bush leeches, such as this one, which hitched a lift back to the station attached to my ankle, probably trying to get to Woy Woy. Back at the station, you'll almost certainly have some time to kill, and the wharf is a pretty nice place to kick back and wait for your train. Speaking of, Wondabyne also happens to be an excellent place for watching and photographing trains. The local services which stop here are currently operated by Oscar H-sets, and during the week you'll also see intercity V-sets passing through on express runs to Newcastle. Throughout the day you'll see the occasional diesel passenger train on longer distance runs, including Explorer DMU sets and XPTs, which run all the way up to Grafton, Casino and Brisbane. As this is an interstate route, there are also frequent freight trains, which look very impressive running through the curves along the creek. As well as intermodal container trains, you can expect to see a lot of bulk loading, including coal and grain trains. It often gets mentioned that this is the only station in Australia with no road access. While this is essentially true, there are some other examples that come pretty close. Blue Cow on the Ski Tube Rack Railway in the New South Wales Southern Alps has no road access during winter, which is when the majority of people actually go there. There are also some borderline examples like Cook in South Australia, which you can drive to, but it's down the end of a 100-kilometre dirt track off the Air Highway in the middle of the Nullarbor Plain. But Wondabyne probably is the only station that you can never get a car to. I'm not exactly sure what happens when there are bus replacements here, but I assume you need to get a water taxi back to Brooklyn. When the time comes to leave, you'll need to signal your intention to board by raising your hand as the train approaches, which the driver will usually acknowledge with a short whistle. It's quite a satisfying feeling using such a small gesture to bring a huge 8-car double-decker train to a halt just for you. If you're wondering how the driver judges the stopping position given they have to land the rear door on the platform, there are stop markers positioned further beyond the platforms showing where to stop the front of trains of various types and lengths. The main reason why the rear door is used is so the guard, who operates the doors, can see what's going on, but there's an added advantage that once the driver is close enough to see if anyone's waiting, they still have an entire train length to bring the train to a stop. It's likely this practice will change quite soon with the introduction of the new Marrayung D sets, which are set to sadly replace the iconic V sets and displace the Oscars to suburban service. The D-sets were initially planned to operate with no guard, so the doors would be operated by the driver, meaning the first door rather than the last would need to be used for short platforms, and stop markers for the D-sets have already appeared at Wondabyne reflecting this. However, at the time of writing, the D-sets have been subject to ongoing industrial disputes and still haven't entered service, so only time will tell how this actually ends up being managed. So that's Wondabyne, one of Australia's smallest stations, surviving against all odds on this busy interstate main line. It's a great example of how, with only very minimal infrastructure, request stops can maintain a public transport connection to a place that would never justify a dedicated service on their own. Thanks to my supporters on Patreon who make videos like this possible, and thanks very much for watching.